Round 2. Who was it? Ernie Banks. Let's play 2.
Let's play 2, right?
Let's play 2. All right. Well,
it's been too long. It took us week 13 to finally get in 2 in a single day, Rob. So we'll see how we can transition this into some off-season action.
And there may be a secret third later tonight, early tomorrow, with an unnamed guest.
Oh, I like it. Okay, now you're going to have me checking my phone all night now to see when the update comes through.
It's probably more likely early tomorrow. I'm starting to fade a little bit. All right, well, before I get into the week 13 matchups, I think there is one race that we have not talked about at all yet on the pod specifically, and that is the race to be the best division. Now, here we go, Casey. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Throwing this at you. I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, here we go. So right now, 2020 SKFL all play records by division. We got first place, 291, second place, 272, third place, 226. Take a guess at 1, 2, and 3.
I mean, I've not looked it up by all play records, but because all play records is so based on just total points, and I know how that plays out, I think this ranking will have it go Piniella, Carl, Knox.
Ding, 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 ding. This was the AJ special. He wanted me to talk to you about the division races. And then now you know this one already, total points by division. Now this one's pretty close. Very close. So you guys could overtake us this week with a big showing, but I already gave that one away.
I've looked at the matchups though, and I think Piniella actually has 3 or 4 of the projected highs this week. So I think that one might be safe, Rob. I think Pinella's still going to have one. I'll give credit to the Piniella. Los had a hell of a year. You had a hell of a year with points. I mean, it's just it finally came back to where Carl's got some competition until I'll copy the words of Ian. Until somebody else wins a title outside of the Carl, it's going to be hard to stack it up. I mean, I think if you just still based it off wins and losses, and I think if you just looked at weeks 4 through 11 when you're not playing within the division, I think Carl is actually number 1 on both of those this year again. But I'll be honest, if a Piniella team wins it this year, I'll have it as a 1A, 1B. But no, I mean, Carl, we talked about it. 10 championships in a row coming from the division is tough.
That's the real deciding factors. You guys are getting the titles. You guys are getting the gravitas, the brass rings, the whole works. And that's really. And
I will say this. I mean, right now, of the 6 playoff teams, I think 3 of them have a shot coming from the Carl. We'll see what happens. I think right now on paper, the favorites are probably 2, 2, and 2. But if I get in, that's 3 Carl team making the playoffs. So I'll hang my feather on that cap too if we can get 3 of us in again.
All right, well, let's not jack around anymore. Let's look at week 13, and I'm going to go through the divisions which have the least, kind of the least tension to those of the most tension. So I'm going to go Piniella first because that's really a battle for 1 or 2. It's interesting, but it's not as interesting as the Knox, which has a lot of different factors. We'll hit them second, then we'll go third, the Carl, because you got the first seed.
The champion's probably coming from there, so let's save them till the end.
Hey, listen, right now you saved the best for last, in the last decade or so, it's certainly been the Carl. All right, so a little different setup because they don't have like this week's game set up yet. Usually I can flip around on that thing. But we do have, we can look at this right now. So first off, Rockford.
I'm going to try and direct you just because go Cappers AJ first, because I feel like that's the big one out of the Piniella.
That's down here. Let's do Capper, then we can breeze over the other one. So Cappers, that's Manic Monday. Hold on. It's good dead air here. Here we go. Cappers against AJ's 3-1 versus the Carl Bums, misspelling Carl, which I love. Okay. Well, here we go. We talked a little bit about this earlier today, but really when I look at AJ, the pluses are you got the Seahawks against the Giants backup. And, Jefferson against the Jags. Swift, this guy could retire next week.
Yeah, I don't even know.
Supposed to get more carries, but you look at this, and I don't love AJ's lineup.
Yeah, I agree. Jeffrey talked about it earlier today about the Deshaun Watson without Will Fuller. I think that has to hurt him. Maybe he runs a little bit more, but Fuller was a top 10 receiver, so losing that's going to be tough. McLaren against the Steelers, as good as McLaren's been, I think that defense is tough. Ruggs against the Jets, it looks good, but Ruggs just hasn't done shit. in forever. I don't know how you're going to play Ruggs with any kind of confidence. And I'm with you on Swift. I think there's something to that injury. I mean, we talked about it earlier, me and you. Concussions feel like they've been way down this year, which is really good news. But this will be 3 games in a row that Swift's missed on a concussion that happened in practice. I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. You know, he's got Ayuk and he's got CeeDee Lamb on his bench, so he's got some pivots there that are decent. But I think for AJ, you know, I think he needs Cousins and Justin Jefferson to really hit, because as sexy as kind of Cam Akers feels like he might be, Darrell Henderson's still getting 40, 50% of those carries right now. And that thing hasn't completely flipped to Akers. So I just feel like AJ's got some holes. I didn't see enough out of Chris Carson last week either. But I guess Hyde's a little bit banged up. So maybe Carson goes back full time. But, you know, AJ needs a lot. And I think you look at Randy's team. Randy, you know, his quarterbacks are shaky. You know, Wentz and Cam Newton haven't been playing great. And Kamara has taken a hit with Taysom Hill. I think he's got 1 catch in his last 2 games, which if Kamara's not catching, that's not good for him. But I mean, those receivers right now on Randy's team are just terrifying. I mean, he's got Robbie Anderson and Antonio Brown on bye, and it's not even killing him. And Brandon Cooks is the big winner with the Will Fuller news. So yeah, I got Cappers winning this one, and I like this matchup because it's essentially for the bye and the division. So credit to Cappers. He's been able to survive some kind of bad quarterback play, and I think he's going to get one of the top 2 seeds.
I'm with you. I like Cappers here, and it may not be close when I look at these matchups. You're right. I think AJ could make some changes. Jeffrey, are you live? We'll take that as a no.
Yeah, we'll see if he jumps in. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think you get Randy this win and he gets the division. I mean, now the key is AJ's got to find another win against either Morrow or Los to avoid going to 7-7, which stuff gets dicey there. And, you know, you look at AJ's team, I think, you know, he's maybe getting a 225, 230 in that range. You could go straight now to the Morrow-Los match, because then we at least see all 4 teams that are in the division.
Here's Jeff.
So okay. On this one, I mean, right now, your matchups look really good. I mean, the Ravens against the Cowboys, we've seen kind of what the floor Cowboys looks like. And so that defense, whenever you look at a defense that can get you a 40 or a 50, you feel really good with your matchups. Yeah, it's Stafford too. I mean, who knows with Tua if he's going to go, and you don't really have an out yet on your roster. So that's a big question mark right now if you were going to put up the big 250, 260 game. David Montgomery, James Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, all those 3 have really good matchups on paper. And they're pretty safe in their roles, I feel like. Taylor's kind of the one question mark. He's coming off of COVID, didn't play at all last week. So we got to see what Taylor's going to do. But I like Cooper Kupp against the Cardinals. I think the slot is where you kind of attack the Cardinals. Tyler Lockett has really taken a step back with DK's emergence. But
really has.
I feel like there is going to be a big Lockett game still coming. The Giants kind of feel like that. I think Bradbury probably kind of shadows DK, and that's their best corner. So I think that frees up Tyler Lockett some. And then Pittman, who had been rolling, you know, he had a bad week last week. But, you know, for a couple weeks there, he was getting hot. And I like the Texans as a matchup. So I think Pittman's a little bit better of a play for you this week. So I think Christian Kirk's also very intriguing against the Rams. You know, I'm high on Kyler, and if they're going to go Ramsey on Hopkins, I do kind of like the Christian Kirk matchup on paper, but he's disappointed now for a couple weeks running. So I understand that the hesitancy of throwing him out there. But
yeah, we'll see. If I got a quarterback out, then Kirk's probably in there. Higgins scares me with the backup quarterback on the Dolphins D's, and Judy is a non-play until they get a real quarterback in there. So
exactly.
Jeffrey, you alive?
Yeah, I'm live. So I caught a little bit of it, but yeah, I mean, I know you guys have moved on from AJ's matchup, and you're on kind of yours and Los's. And one thing that I was like shocked to see about Los, I mean, I was doing the numbers on Claypool. It's kind of surprising how, I mean, it's a testament to Los's roster that I think he's only started Claypool like 3 or 4 times. Like, and he's actually kind of missed, like he benched him on some of his big whiff games. So he's actually, so many people think of Claypool as like a everyday must start. It just shows how good Los's receivers are and actually how good his running backs are. It's just one of those weird, it's just one of those weird years for Los to be 4-8 with, Claypool on his bench, like, because you feel like with Mike Davis and Kenyon Drake and those guys that he had to flex out the running back. And so he was, I think Claypool probably starts on 11 other teams, or maybe not Randy's, but it's just kind of
Ian
funny.
and I were talking about the receivers, and Ian was talking about, Randy's receivers that we just talked about. Tyreek Hill and DK Metcalf are 1-2 in scoring in the league right now. And he's like, has there ever been a better, group of receivers with AJ Brown and Antonio Brown? And, he's got 1-2 in the SKFL. Los has 4, 6, and 7. He's got 3 guys in the top 7 with Keenan Allen, Hopkins, and Diggs. So, that's right up there with anybody. That doesn't even count Chase Claypool, who I don't know where he's at, but he's got to be a top 15 guy. So, no, Los with 4 legit, 15 receivers. That's the strength of his team along with Aaron Rodgers. Los is top 3 in points for a reason. Los is going to throw up a good 240 pretty consistently right now. And so it's intriguing. This is the other matchup where we talked about earlier. The winner of this has the road to 6 wins, which if you can get to 6 wins, you've got an outside shot. So very intrigued by this, but it's a Rob. I like Rob's numbers. I don't think he's got kind of a weak play where, Drake and Hunt are still guys you're a little bit hesitant on. But it's going to come down to Tua, and I don't feel good about him playing over Fitzpatrick right now. It's just a rookie guy that's not practicing really full time, and you've got a guy like Fitzpatrick. I think they ride Fitzpatrick for one more week.
Yeah, I could see this coming down to the defense too. The Titans against kind of the feckless Brown passing game, and then the Ravens against a shot Cowboy team that's still in it a little bit. That could be the difference. And the projection has it as a 25-point difference. If that happens, I feel pretty good about my chances. I don't think it's going to be that big of a difference, though.
Yeah, I think we talk about the learning curve of the SKFL, and I think there's no greater curve than, the 2 big ones are the draft, obviously, learning where, new owners having to learn where tendencies are, people go. And then number 2 would be defense. And I think Los is 4-8 because he couldn't figure out defenses early on. I think if he played a mediocre defense a couple weeks, he's had a couple negatives on D's. If he just zeroed out the defensive position, some of those 5-point losses that he's had, he would have won. So it's defense. And then even the Titans thing, you can kind of tell that's a dangerous defense. Maybe you're hoping for a few sacks, but that's a game that, has a 55-point over under. That's a game that I could easily see that Titans defense putting up a -1, and there's just very limited upside, especially when you're banking that Hunt's going to get 80 yards. It's a tough start for sure.
Been over 10 3 times all year.
We've always talked about the defenses where it's you want to try and keep the game low scoring because you want to keep the yards at a minimum and you want the points at a minimum. But if you're not getting those sacks and the turnovers, you're just not really able to stack because teams are going to score 10 points. The Browns aren't going to get shut out. So they're going to go for 260 yards and 10 points. And at that point, you've already lost 15 and 15. So you're only getting 10 points from that. The problem with the Browns is, maybe Baker throws a couple picks, knock on wood, but they don't throw it enough to where he's getting sacked a ton. They're running the ball so much that I think your counting stats on your defense are just so limited when you play a team like the Browns. I think the Vikings are the same way. They just don't really get sacked because they're only dropping back to pass 20 times a game. I remember on Los has only had 3 or 4 double-digit defensive games. It's even when he hits on one, it's an 8 or a 9. And he'll be one that benefits if we get rid of defense next year because he's had a really bad time streaming them this year.
All right, well, let's maybe move to the Knox. What do you think?
Yeah, if you look at all 4 of those matchups, I think Randy puts up the high this week, so he's probably looking at 2-0. Where it's intriguing is the AJ. Can the winner of Moro Los beat AJ? I think that's the big question mark because that team goes 2-0 if it happens. Essentially,
probably not.
Yeah, I exactly. It comes down to Aaron Rodgers for Los. if he, he's been on a mission this year. So if he throws up another 50 with his receivers, I think he can beat anybody.
Wentz benching like in the first quarter would be helpful.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we need. You need to throw him a pick on the first drive, and Peterson just says "fuck it" and throws Jalen Hurts out there. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so it'll be interesting there. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to AJ and Cappers, and Los and I have a Hail Mary potential. Moving over to the Knox, probably the top game is Respects against WrestleMania. Is that you agree, Casey?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the one I'm most intrigued with is probably Wade against Musa, because I think it might be the closest. But I mean, Blake against him is for the division, essentially. I mean, if Blake wins that game, then he's serious for the division.
Well, let's look at Wade Musa. Let's look at Wade Musa first, then.
This one will be close. I mean, you look at this, and it's like Wade needs to find a win. Musa needs to find a win. So this one has the most intrigue. I feel like the winner of this game is in the playoffs. So it's probably one of the game of the weeks. Musa just got his lineup flexed in, so we kind of see what he's looking like now. Wade's just so banged up right now. I mean, Josh Jacobs out, Mixon's out. I mean, he's lost his two backs. I mean, thank goodness he's
Holiday's out.
He goes and gets Gio Bernard and Booker. He's one of those handcuff guys, which if he didn't handcuff those guys, he'd be in big trouble right now. But Galladay's out. I mean, Godwin's on bye. Wade has just been so banged up this year that as bad as Musa's team look, when I started to look at this matchup, it's like Musa actually has a shot at beating Wade. I was a little bit more worried about Wade not winning, 2 games this week with my battle with him. But this is the matchup that I think he's in trouble. I think this one comes down to Taysom Hill against the Falcons. Taysom Hill 2 weeks ago played the Falcons, so they've got the book on him, and he played great. Last week against the Broncos, which was such a weird game, he didn't do well at all, but he didn't really have to. So we kind of saw what Taysom Hill's floor might look like. But I think that's what this comes down to is Josh Allen, Taysom Hill needs to put up more like an 80 or a 90 for Wade because he's got some holes everywhere else. I mean, I think on paper right now, Robert Woods is his best player, which you would not have thought a month and a half ago. And, just all those other guys, Tyler Boyd with a change of quarterback, DJ Chark with a change of quarterback, both backup running backs in there. He just doesn't have the studs outside of his quarterbacks at all.
This looks like a pillow fight to me. What about you, Jeff?
It's hard to call it a pillow fight because there's so many repercussions to the matchup. I mean, the division's in play. Other people trying to get into the playoffs are paying attention to that matchup. And to speak on Taysom Hill, Wade's got the Saints defense as well. And they absolutely steamrolled the Falcons the last time. But, you have a questionable Julio, a questionable Gurley that's played in Atlanta. There's a chance, there's a world where Atlanta figures it out, their stars play, and that Saints D, if Wade gets what he got from the Saints D 2 weeks ago against the Falcons, I think he's going to win. But there's a world where the Falcons can score 24 points, put pressure on Taysom Hill, make it so that Taysom Hill has to chuck it, which gets him out of his, being able to run it for 60 yards and a touchdown. So that's the game to me that, Casey spoke to it, but that's the game that kind of flips things. If that's low scoring, Taysom only scores 25 and the Saints D only gets 15 or 20, Wade's going to be in trouble. But if that turns into some, they blow out Atlanta, they're able to kind of run Taysom Hill, and Taysom Hill gets a 40 and the Saints D gets a 30, that's going to put him in a big position. So that's the game to watch, I think, in that matchup.
Yeah, this one's too close to call for me. The one thing I do like from a Vegas standpoint is I might put 20 on the Falcon money line. I just got a feeling that they're kind of peaking at the right time and have already seen the Hill show once. So that's
exactly. That's the thing. If this is the first time seeing Taysom Hill for them, but it was just 2 weeks ago. I mean, 13 days ago, they saw Taysom Hill. I mean, they've been studying that tape. They're going to make him not do whatever. I mean, for me on Musa, the quarterbacks there have probably the 2 best matchups of the week. I mean, Derek Carr versus the Jets, Fitzmagic against the Bengals. I mean, you love that matchup. If Musa's going to win, it's going to be because of those guys. Because you look, starting Jameson Crowder and Darius Slayton, that just shows you, geez, the Mike Evans bye hurts. Because those guys should not be playing in a doubleheader week at all. They've just both kind of fallen off the map over the last month. He's going to need Waller to step up. I think his big one's Miles Sanders. I mean, Sanders against the Packers, you run against the Packers. And I think I read last year he ran for like 150 against the Packers. So Sanders, but Miles Sanders just, I mean, he needs to get a 25-30. And the Eagles Eagles offense, we saw him last week against the Hawks. I don't know what to make out of it. You talked about it with Wentz, and it's just that could be shit show. I mean, that game could be like a 35-3 type of game for the Packers.
Mhm.
And if that happens, that's not good for Sanders. So Moose has got a road for sure, but it's going to be because Sanders steps up and his quarterbacks kind of just go nuclear.
My bold prediction in that game is Robert Woods is the highest scoring player in that game. I think you attack. I think McVay's seen enough of Goff to let him throw it to anybody other than Woods and Kupp. And I think you attack the Cardinals with Patrick Peterson. I think that's a game where Woods goes nuclear, like how he did on that Monday night game, where you're talking 10 plus balls, 2 touchdowns for Woods. I think he gets a 50, and we'll revisit that, but that's my bold call for the game.
I'm giving Wade a narrow win. The other Isbell versus Musa matchup, I really like the Isbell in this one big time.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think Blake could have the high of the week, really. I mean, his guys have pretty good matchups. I mean, Herbert against Belichick will be very intriguing. Bill Belichick could really throw something at him. I mean, we saw Mahomes have a down game. We saw, was it Kyler just had a down game against them? So it's like he's going to have something for Herbert. So I don't know if the ceiling game for Herbert's there. Russell Wilson, I think, could have a really big game. I mean, Chubb's been on fire. Devontae Adams is going to have a monster game against the Eagles. Jarvis Landry's the one. I think we were talking about it on the side. Look at Landry. Everybody said, okay, when Odell went down, Jarvis Landry was going to pop. Well, he didn't really do anything, but you forget that 2 of those games, were played in like 50-mile-per-hour winds. So it was when Baker threw for shit. They only threw for like 130 yards. But we saw his matchup last week against the Jags. He throws up a 30 or 40. Watch out. I mean, that's another superstar for Blake. So, it's, the Packers D, he wavered them this week, which I thought was really smart because, you were worried about the Eagles. I had the Packers last week and dropped them. But the Eagles are just getting sacked so much. And so it's like, you get 5 sacks on Carson Wentz. Well, there's 10 points. And so I think, I think
points and minus 40 yards.
Yeah, exactly. I think Blake kind of wins this one easily. I think the teams that are hoping Blake doesn't make it, they need Musa to win the division and break the tie on points. So if they're both at 8, Musa gets in and wins that division. So Musa just has to focus on Wade. I mean, Musa has to beat Wade and he's in the playoffs. Because I don't think if he's trying to beat Blake, he's got a shot. Myles Gaskin, who knows if he's even getting activated. Duke Johnson, now they're saying David Johnson's coming back. So what happened in there? I think both those guys hurt each other. So yeah, he's got a lot of holes in his lineup. But like I said with the last matchup, he needs those quarterbacks to come and he needs Miles Sanders to hit. He needs to find a defense, and man, there aren't any defenses available right now. So that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, it certainly will be. And I like Blake here big time. I think this could be an absolute shellacking. Jeff, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think Blake's the favorite, but there's a road for Herbert putting up an 18. I mean, I don't think Belichick's ever lost to a rookie quarterback. So there's a world where Herbert puts up, a 16 or an 18. It's a low over under. I could see that being Cam Newton, James White kind of controlling the game flow. I don't see them chucking it deep. Herbert's lived off of whammies. Like, I think if you get a Herbert down in like the mid 20s, and then who knows with the Giants and the Seahawks, I mean, you could have a floor Russell game. That feels like a weird game where Seattle just sort of like lays an egg too. So, I mean, for a team that's been relying on 75 plus from his quarterbacks, there's a world where he could get 50 and completely swing that game. So I don't think it's cut and dry. I mean, Blake's team is very scary because he's got 4 guys. I think I mentioned it on the last one, is he's got 4 guys that can go for 160. But if you get one of those bad performances from one of those guys, it opens the door to a lot. So curious to see what Herbert does. I mean, basically Belichick completely stifles the other team's best player. So that's going to be blitzes up the middle, and we'll see if Herbert, I mean, that's kind of what they did to Herbert last week. And he checked down a bunch and didn't have one of his crazy high weeks. So he absolutely destroyed Kyler Murray. So I would have my money on Herbert not having a good week. Belichick just does it so many times.
You know, and I think if Blake was playing somebody like an Ian or a Jeffrey or a Randy or something like that, I think that comes into play. I think, you know, going up against Musa and Kinney this week, I mean, I don't think those guys are really approaching 210, 220. I think Blake can survive a bad Herbert. You look at his roster, I mean, he doesn't have a hole. I mean, Hines will get you 15 or 20 now. Melvin Gordon will get you 15 against the Chiefs that you can kind of run on. So it's, yeah, I mean, and then Nelson Aguilar is playing the Jets, who I feel like is a great matchup for him. And so he's got 15s and 20s everywhere through the lineup. And so Evan Ingram with Colt McCoy being hurt might be a problem. I actually like probably Gesicki a little bit more with Fitzpatrick if he goes over Tua. But it's, yeah, Blake's team right now is pretty deep in terms of his starting lineup potential and even what he's got on his bench. It's you know, the one that you want to skim past, but Dark Side, you're on it right now against Wade is actually very, very intriguing.
This is the one I want to talk about. Just we want to. I mean, obviously the Dark Side's out of it with all intents and purposes, but
yeah,
is there any path for an upset for him this week? And this might be it right here, right? Is that kind of where you're going?
This is exactly where I'm going right now. You know, I'm trying to find Wade a second loss or one loss this week because that kind of essentially eliminates him. He can't get to 7. And so if I want to give him a win against Musa, then can I get one from Kinney to upset him? And I don't know. I mean, Big Ben, he'll need James Conner to come back for sure, because we just didn't see anything out of McFarland with that thing. It was the Benny Snell show for sure. And I don't know how Conner's timeline looks exactly right now with his COVID, but I know he hasn't been practicing. So that's not good. His receivers are all decent. I mean, when you look at them against Wade's, they're not that different. I mean, Boyd and Chark and Robert Woods is the big one, but Mike Williams, Cole Beasley, Patrick, Sammy Watkins, I feel like all those guys are getting you, a safe floor play out of that. He's going to have to find a tight end, which tight end you don't want to be looking for right now. So he's going to get nothing out of his tight end. But that Steelers D against the football team, I mean, that could be a big game.
Football team.
And then Drew Lock's intriguing. I mean, Drew Lock, he just played the Chiefs recently, and I don't think he did anything. But a healthy Drew Lock has put up fantasy points. He hasn't been good, but he's put up fantasy points. So
that he has. There it is,
I mean,
right there.
Yeah, I mean, it's
36,
not
49.
He needs to get a 30 from Drew Lock, and he needs to have Big Ben have a pretty good game. But that's his road. But that being said, Derrick Henry, like, we're in the month of December. I mean, Derrick Henry can go get him a 60. And it's the reason Kinney beat Musa last week was Derrick Henry went off. Yep. I mean, and Henry against the Browns, I feel like that's a big matchup. I think Henry throws up a 50. Kinney can win this one.
That'll be an interesting one. And I agree with you. I think that is the path for an upset. And Wade's probably going to make some changes to his lineup, obviously, to try to affect some change there. Now let's move to the Carl, the aforementioned second place in the SKFL, Carl. Jeffrey missed that fun part. We'll start with probably the sexiest matchup, IAC against RDR. Two of the probably the Alabama and the LSU of the SKFL. And I'll start with you, Jeff, if you're able to. Kind of how do you see your brother matching up against the Red Hot Revival?
It'll be interesting. I mean, IAC's got some question marks at receiver, that he'll have to kind of straighten out and feel good about. I played Ian last week, and I mean, the whole time I'm saying there, if we can't beat Ian when he's down Julio, McCaffrey, and Lamar, like, what chance do we have? And, I lost to him. So you feel like you have to throw up a 250 to beat Ian because he just still has, with the quarterbacks and with his depth, he's got the ability to just throw that up. Now, Casey's been living off of Kyler. So if he can get, a 50 or a 60 out of Kyler, he can match Patrick Mahomes. And then that, RDR doesn't become as scary. But Casey's team's got question marks. He's scary because you just don't know. He's a hard guy to play against because you just don't know what his guys are going to do. Like, you're sort of expecting Clyde only to get 15 to 20 which seems crazy because he was the first pick in the SKFL and he's missed practice all week with some mysterious illness. So he could be out. Like, you don't know what's going to come of that. But you could also have a crazy high Aaron Jones and Mostert game where they go nuts and, you know, have 30s and 40s. So he's got really weird guys where they're hard to project. You can look at his roster on a Tuesday and think he's only going to score a 210. And then you can look at it again and talk yourself into, well, yeah, there's a path for him to get 260. So it's kind of fascinating that not only does he need to win and kind of worry about what's going on outside of the division, but I could see it either way. I've known I'll never pick against Ian. Like until you do it, like Ian doesn't lose. Like, so I got Ian winning that game, but there's definitely a path if Lamar misses and Julio sits, there's definitely some vulnerability for RDR where Casey can get them.
Yeah.
And I mean, just to talk on mine a little bit, I mean, I put up a 250 last week with Kyler scoring an 18. And so like, that's what gives me, you know, some confidence. I mean, if that's a 50 from Kyler, I'm throwing up a 280. And so all of a sudden I feel like, okay, I need to get a Kyler 50 game for sure. But I've spent all week trying to replace Will Fuller. I mean, part of that 250 last week was getting a 50 out of Will Fuller. And so that's my big hit. For me right now, I feel like I mean, receivers, I've got to figure that out. I think if Fitzpatrick plays, Devontae Parker's a receiver one when Fitzpatrick plays. Like his last 2 weeks, he's throwing up 30s basically. So I got no problem with Parker. I just felt way better when he was my 2 next to Will Fuller. You know, he's now there as that 1. And I just need those running backs to hit. You know, Aaron Jones has not had a ceiling game since he's been back. You know, Aaron Rodgers is just throwing for so many touchdowns right now that, you know, a 23, 24, 25 from Jones isn't going to cut it. Now, I like the matchup against the Eagles. I think you can run on the Eagles, and I think they can win big, but he comes off the field a lot. I need Aaron Jones and Mostert to really have some good games, and I need Kyler and Baker to have some good games, and then I'd feel pretty good.
Yeah, I'm hoping it happens. I mean, I obviously have a rooting interest that Ian loses, and Ian has some holes. I mean, I don't really know where he pivots, probably to Kiki Kuti if Julio sits, and you don't want to play those 3 running backs right now. I don't think all 3 of his backs that are in.
Yeah.
I don't think you want any one of those guys. I mean, Chase is going to play, but you don't feel good about Gallman against the Hawks at all. I mean, that feels like it could be a single-digit Gallman game. Edmonds is a question mark. And then, Gus Edwards, he lost carries to Justice Hill. So he doesn't even
Dobbins is coming back too. Exactly.
Yeah. So there's a world where, Ian could lose both of these and then all of a sudden fall to the 5 or the 6. I mean, we've kind of penciled him into just the 4 or whatever, but there's a world where he loses both of these and gets to 8 and 6 because, you know, we knew it was coming with DJ Moore and McCaffrey missing 13, but if he misses Julio, Allen Robinson has missed some practice. He's going to have, it's a good matchup with Detroit, but there's a chance that, Ian throws up at 210. I don't love his defense. You're banking on, some picks with Drew Lock and that stuff. But if that game gets out of hand, which you sort of need it to, if you're banking on Mahomes, then Drew Lock's good enough to, move the ball and score some points. And I don't think the Chiefs are going to be able to throw up a 40. And that's the difference between Ian being beatable and then Ian just running away with it. We saw it last year. I mean, when Ian had the top defense in the league, he was unbeatable last year. Ian's been vulnerable this year because he's been sort of streaming defenses. And when he picks the right D, like he did last week, he's unbeatable. But I don't love his D. So Casey's definitely got a shot.
Yeah, and we went this whole segment and we haven't even brought up Lamar Jackson, which is crazy because 2 months ago that was his best player. So if Lamar gets healthy, I mean that's a huge upgrade over Brandon Allen because Brandon Allen against the Dolphins, he was decent last week, but that was against the Giants. I don't like Brandon Allen against the Dolphins one bit. So I think that's a play that I've got.
I don't like Brandon Allen against the Beavers.
Yeah. So it's Deontay is always kind of scary. Julio is always kind of scary, but he's got enough holes on his team that I agree. But it's funny. Ian's just found a way to win all these close games this year. That it's huge. I think ultimately, and I talked about my running backs and I talked about my quarterbacks, but it's always Mahomes when you play Ian. If Mahomes throws up a 60, you just aren't going to beat him. and especially when you got the Chief running game on the other side of it. So if it happened to be a game where the Chief running game, got 2 or 3 touchdowns in that, I'd feel great. I'd feel really good. But if Mahomes goes and throws for 4 or 5, that would concern me. So, it's funny. Jeffrey brought up Clyde, that, the number 1 overall pick, who kind of been up and down. Now he hasn't practiced for 2 days. I almost feel like I'm better off if he gets ruled out and I can just go full in on Le'Veon Bell. Clyde Edwards is intriguing, but if he's been sick and they get up big, do they just end up resting, Clyde and then, filtering in more Le'Veon and Darrell Williams? So it's funny. I feel like with both those guys, if Edwards has been sick for so long, they've already limited his touches and his carries. So I am actually, it's funny, at a point where it's like, man, let's just see what Le'Veon Bell can do with 25 touches.
The one thing that's kind of note here is Mahomes has had really one shaky game all year. That was against Denver. He only put up a 22. That was kind of a weird game, though, with the picks.
Yeah, it was a snow game. It was weather was a big time issue.
Yep.
There was like 4 inches of snow on the ground.
I think there was a kickoff return and a pick 6 in that game.
Yeah,
so.
But Fangio can scheme something to, you got to just hold. These are just grasping at straws to help me win the division. But if there's a defensive mind to be able to kind of put a hex on Mahomes, there's a world where Fangio could do it. So,
well, let's take a look at Jeffrey's matchup. Now, Jeffrey, you've got your brother and you've got Yusuf. Sorry. So let's go take a look at your Yusuf matchup just so we can get Yusuf on the board here today as well. Casey, how do you kind of see this one playing out? Obviously Yusuf's, throwing in the towel based at this point, not in terms of he's putting together good lineups, but he tossed some pretty good players. I look at this and I see that as this is a kind of a competitive matchup, definitely favoring Jeffrey, but there's some decent pieces there for Yusuf to maybe pull a big upset.
Yeah, it's funny. A couple weeks ago, I thought Ronald Jones was kind of just a throw-in piece, but now he's relying on Ronald Jones. So Jones being on bye kind of hurts. Zeke Elliott has not looked good at all. The last time we saw Zeke was on Thanksgiving. I think he threw up a 6. So yeah, now he goes against Baltimore. So I don't feel good about Zeke at all. Darrell Henderson, he's now kind of in a 3-committee backfield that you don't feel good about. So it's all about kind of maybe those receivers that are all decent, but none of them really scare you. I like Tannehill and I like Trubisky's matchups. So I think, quarterback wise, he can get, 75, 80 points out of those games. But he's got a shot at 220 if Zeke goes off. And I just don't really know if I like Zeke going off against the Ravens.
Jeffrey, what scares you most about your Yusuf matchup?
Just the traditional big names. Elliott, it's just a weird feeling. I've played Elliott because he's been in the Carl, so you play him 2 times a year. It's just like the same way there's ghosts behind some of these names that you don't even realize that they're not very good anymore. Like Elliott's an RB2. Like you shouldn't be afraid of Zeke at all this year, but just out of reputation and out of name, he's the kind of guy that can swing a matchup because there's no world where he should be able to get a 40 against the Ravens D with that offense with Dalton. But that's just kudos to his reputation that you have to kind of expect that. And then same thing with Michael Thomas, like in your head, you see those names when you're going against them. And it's like, well, yeah, of course Elliott should be better than Gibson. And of course, Michael Thomas should be better than Juju. But then when you factor in like, okay, well, he's got Taysom Hill thrown in it to you. And then Yusuf just kind of has, some of that mojo where, he can win with quarterbacks that he shouldn't be able to win with. Like he falls into Trubisky late. Trubisky owns the Lions. So, and then he's got Tannehill against the Browns, which is, I think, going to be the high score of the week. I think that's going to be like an over 60. I think that's going to be like a 35-28 type game. So that's potentially scary. And then it's just those ragtag groups of receivers that you just don't know what's going to come of. Like Lazard and Yusuf kind of lives on those types of guys that can either go for a 2 or a 3 or a 30. And he's got Deebo Samuel that he's probably going to activate. And Deebo's very scary in that matchup too. So there's weapons, but you just don't know how he's going to fill out his team. And there's guys that he lives on kind of those home run guys like Marvin Jones, Lazard, Sterling Shepard all could go for like 7s, but they also all could, go for 30s. And you just got to hope that you get one of those guys to bust, and then he's beatable.
And I think, Shepard actually has a pretty nice floor. I think I've seen something with him where like he's got a stretch of 5 catches in games that he's finished. I know he got hurt in that week 2 game here, but it goes back like 2 seasons. Like every game that he has actually finished all the way back to like 2018, he's had 5 catches in a game. So he's weird, but without Daniel Jones and them going to Colt McCoy, who knows? Marvin Jones, I played against him last week, and it was like you felt like you were doing nothing, and then one drive he caught 3 balls, and he went from like a 2 to a 15 on one drive late in the 4th quarter. So yeah, he's got guys that you feel like, you said it, like you're not really worried about the 40s and 50s, but he's got enough of the guys that will always get 15 that if 140 or 50 hits, all of a sudden he's looking good.
I'm a little worried about my team too, just with I'm a little banged up, like with Dalvin. That's a good matchup against Jacksonville, but they could pull him in the 4th quarter, and now you're not getting the 40s and the 45s, you're getting like 20s to the 30s with Dalvin. Gibson in a very negative game script going to lose some downs to McKissick. Ridley's going to be in and out of the lineup. And, I was the first to 9 wins, really strong, banked on my running game, but my quarterbacks have been so inconsistent, which is so the opposite of what I expected. I mean, I drafted those guys thinking they were both very safe. I was building my team around the running backs and then the tight end position, and then depth at receiver, and the quarterbacks, I just wanted basic, consistent floor 28 to 35. And it's just funny because they've been the complete opposite. Like they either boom and go for 40s, or bust and go for like 12s, which is like horrible for what I wanted my team to be, which is kind of funny that I was able to jump out to such a hot start because I've been getting such sporadic quarterback play. So I feel good about my team because the 3 backs I feel like should be able to beat anybody's quarterbacks. And then I feel like, okay, my quarterbacks will beat anybody's running backs. But there's a world where Matt Ryan, puts up a 12 the same week that Goff puts up a 12. And now I'm not scoring 200. I've avoided that where both of the quarterbacks' bad weeks have happened on opposite weeks. So I've been able to keep my score afloat. But it's scary when I'm setting my lineup where, okay, yeah, if this is a bad Goff game at the same time I get a bad Ryan game, then that snowballs to a bad Ridley game, and that now I'm very beatable. And Ertz is coming back, so that makes Goddard less of a ceiling play and all that stuff. But I do feel like Goddard's the best player on that team, so he'll be okay. So I feel like that's my path. I think Yusuf's my easier win of the 2 that I have. That's the one I need. And then I got to just hope that Ian only throws up at 230 and I hold him on points, and I don't even have to worry about what happens against IAC.
Well, I remember when I was looking at, I remember when Joe Burrow went down, and I knew I was playing Jeffrey in week 13, and I knew it was going to be a big game for me. The first thing I told Jeffrey was like, shit, the Dolphins now get to play the Bengals with freaking Brandon Allen. So, to me, that's just such a big piece right now. That Dolphins defense.
That Dolphins defense could be the difference right there.
Yeah, that feels like one of those 40-50. So, no, Jeffrey's nailed it. His weakness now is his quarterback because he just doesn't have consistent ceilings out of those guys. It's weird. Like Goff and Matt Ryan, I remember at the beginning of the year thinking, these are two. They were tough, and we were talking about the Matt Ryan trade and all that stuff. It was like he's got 2 legit low end quarterback 1s, and they're really only quarterback 2s right now. But I don't hate their matchups this week, and we know when they have good matchups, they actually usually perform. Ryan didn't look good against the Saints, but I just saw that Janoris Jenkins is out this week, which I think is huge. And they say that's usually who guards Calvin Ridley, where they keep Lattimore on Julio. So I think for Jeffrey, that Janoris Jenkins injury, who had been playing really well recently, is going to be big for the Atlanta passing game.
Here's a scenario for you. It's Monday night. Jeffrey has beaten Yusuf. He's got the points on RDR. It's already over. He's clinched the 1. How much money would you offer Jeffrey to pull Gibson out of that lineup if that game was close? Put him out.
Let's see. Does he have a pivot? Because he could go with Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, after the whammy. I would talk him into the whammy that he got late in the game on Thursday and say that was the turning point for Marquise Brown. He's going to earn his Hollywood nickname back. let's throw Hollywood out there and go for the overall high in points. See if you can get a 300 and go for the ceiling play.
You could put Brown and Rager out there, take out Juju and Gibson, and it would just rock the SKFL. I mean, you imagine the outcry.
Yeah, I know. I'm expecting you to superimpose the $1 Million Man. Everybody has a price gift here with this little negotiation here, but that would be a dream scenario. I mean, then I could sort of like, manipulate. Okay, who do I want to see? I'd have the bye locked up. Who do I want to see in week 15 and all that stuff? But yeah, I believe
that happened in the past. I mean, we've had teams that would rather play a certain team. Want to fall to the 2 seed instead of the 1 seed. So, I mean, there's some precedent there, but it's risky. I mean, you looked at that Monday night game. Don't forget, we actually have a Tuesday night game and we have a second Monday night game this week. So, yeah. I mean, I think Ian still would have potentially Lamar Jackson coming in and Gus Edwards coming in on Tuesday. So it'll be crazy just to think that, the doubleheader, as crazy as it is, usually is decided by Sunday night for the most part. There's always, a couple guys going on Monday, but you still got 2 games on Monday and a game on Tuesday to play. So this thing's going to, not be decided come Sunday night to know who's going to be in the postseason. So that's what I'm anxious to see.
All right. So before we wrap this up, give me your predictions. Casey and Jeff, the Brothers Tager matchup. Casey, who wins it?
Yeah, I think I pieced together my receivers this week. I feel pretty good about it. I know Jeffrey's strength were running backs, but I really like my running backs this week if I can figure out what the Chiefs are going to do. So and then I think my Kyler can beat his quarterback. So yeah, I've got myself winning.
Jeffrey?
I'll give Casey the win. I think the decision not to keep Kyler, I mean, I'm curious. I would love to go back and know what would have happened if I kept Kyler over Marquise Brown. And that my one weakness would have just been my strength. I would feel like I probably would have one of the better teams in SKFL history had I done that, because Marquise Brown hasn't helped much. But I'll give Casey the win just because it's so hard to run through the division like that. And I'm kind of reeling right now. I've lost 2 in a row, but and I'd already beat him earlier in the year in a week that I really probably didn't deserve to beat him. He had 2 whammies. He had like 90 points from 2 of his running backs. So I'll give him the win, keep him a little excited. I'm focusing on the Yusuf matchup for sure.
All right, boys.
Well, before you're talking about kind of where you want to plot, like to me, when we've always talked about Blake's team, like, Blake wins the division. He's the 3 seed, which, I think you want to avoid. But if Musa was the 3 seed, I feel like the 6 seed wild card has the greatest draw of any spot in the postseason. So I'm definitely got root and interest in Musa to hang on for the division, and me sneaking in with the 6 seed, because all of a sudden that puts AJ, Jeffrey, Ian top half of the playoff bracket. I mean, those are the 3 best teams.
Yeah, that is true, and that very well could happen.
Yeah, I know.
Anything before we take off? Any last notes? 7:24 Pacific or Eastern time here in the night of the Friday, the 4th.
Yeah, it's been a crazy week with the football schedule. I mean, it does not feel like we're 2 days away from Sunday. I mean, it doesn't feel like a Friday to me at all. I mean, we just had a football game yesterday. 2 days. I don't even know. Like the football.
2 days ago.
What fucking day is it, man?
Yeah. I'm just still so pissed that freaking Lamar Jackson in this matchup should have played yesterday, still been on COVID, and we should have been just done with the Baltimore-Dallas part of the doubleheader. Really sucks to not have a Thursday game within our doubleheader. A lot of times you like to just look at Friday, see some of those players that have already played, and factor that into kind of projections. We're just going in there with, not knowing anything, and it's going to be crazy. 7 games coming in at 10 a.m. tomorrow or on Sunday. It's going to be madness. But it's funny because when you look at the teams that are playing late, this thing is not going to be known. I mean, you got the Chiefs playing late. You've got the Ravens playing late. You've got Steelers playing late. Like high-power offenses are all going in those late games Sunday night, Monday, and Tuesday. So,
don't forget the Redskins powerhouse.
Gibson has been on
fire.
Gibson
at 50. Okay, so real quick before we go, predictions. Jeffrey, Stanford, Washington tomorrow. Go.
Washington. Jimmy Lake's not losing at home.
Casey, give me a score.
I'll go. Our defense has looked pretty good this year. I don't really know anything about Stanford, to be honest, but they're practicing like at some Bellevue Park, I think.
Yeah, that one downtown.
Yeah, so I don't think they're ready. kudos to them for getting this game in. I'm just honestly so out of college football, like timeline wise. Like, I feel like the season just started, and I think the SEC's got like their final game this week. So I've been tracking some of the prospects that are out there, but it's been a weird year. But I'll give Lake a lot of credit. Like, I was kind of shitting on the team 2 or 3 weeks ago, but they've been impressive. And I think they're as good as anybody that I've kind of watched in the Pac-12 right now.
I agree. I've watched it all, just because that's my deal. And if Oregon loses tomorrow to Cal, which is not without that, we win the North. It's over.
Yeah, is it really
It's
over
insane.
just like that? Damn,
just like that, yeah, because we'll have a 2-game lead on them with one game left to play. So I got the Huskies 27-17, not covering, just because Stanford we're more talented than them, but Stanford always gives us trouble. They're just kind of one of those teams that they can run the ball 58 times and just chew the damn clock. So anyway, all right.
No, I'm curious, if you would have told me that we'd have this much success this year, a month ago, I would have said, Newton was, carrying the load for us. I've been shocked that he's just been a non-factor at all.
Yeah, I'm wondering what's going. I think Lake has a different personality style in terms of the running backs he likes. I think Peterson liked more of the smaller, shifty. I think it seems like Lake likes this big ass.
Yeah. Brandon Jacobs, power backs for sure.
All right.
And the quarterback. We're owed a good UW football season because the UW basketball season is a wrap. So we just lost Nas Carter, exited the program. He was trying to fight through. He had a sexual assault allegation or whatever, but he basically just announced he's going overseas to play.
Did you get healthy after that, by the way? I know there's some bumps and bruises.
What's up?
When Nas sexually assaulted you?
Oh, I took one for the team. Yeah. I'm good with it, but it's brutal. I mean, Hopkins is on the hot seat. I mean, if you've watched them play at all, they're just,
I missed all the Baylor game because it was during football, but I watched a lot of the game yesterday, and I didn't even recognize that offense. I didn't recognize that team. Like, it didn't look like a D1 game at all.
They don't look like a Pac-12 team. They don't look like a Power 5. They don't look like a fucking. I mean, shit. They look like
SPSL goddamn team. Man.
They look like Kennedy, for God's sakes. Like, a skinny white guy and a bunch of other.
I'm pretty sure our rec league team of me, Morrow, Musa, Trevor, Doc, and Casey could out rebound them. Like, no joke, they're being out rebounded. Like something.
UC Riverside beat them by 24 on the glass or something like that.
It's like they've got like 40 rebounds in 4 games or 3 games, and they've been out rebounded by like 30 in every game they've played, and it's like a team that zones that's big. I mean, we start a 6'10" guy, a 6'9" guy, and yeah, it's bad news.
Well, I don't even know like what our philosophy is. Like, it doesn't really look like we're running the zone, or we don't.
I don't think Hopkins knows that
people for the zone. I don't either. Well, and it's like, I think Morrow said it, like, at one point he's like, I think he's a bad recruiter. And then he's like, actually, maybe he's a good recruiter. He's a bad coach. I don't even know what it is. And it's like, there's so much talent in state right now. And I think like of the top
zero.
We're getting nothing of it. And it's like, this was the kind of the risk when you bring in a guy from out of state. It's like, okay, he comes in, he doesn't have any local ties. And if he doesn't have success right off the bat, now he's lost all of his ties on the East Coast because nobody wants to come to UW. And we talked about, I mean, UW on the, west of the Rockies, I mean, should be up there with any of the other powerhouses just based on Seattle and what you've got like locally to be able to bring in. And I just don't understand how you can keep like a guy, Dahl. You can't find better assistants than like Dollar and Will Conroy. Like, and you're coming from like the Syracuse umbrella tree. Like,
when your athletic department's willing to pay pretty well for assistants too, but the pipeline in Seattle is actually kind of down. I mean, there's some high-end talent with like Hickman and Noel and some of these guys, but they leave. Like, most of the talent in the States actually on the east side, because it's the inner city talent, like the hotbeds of Garfield, Federal Way, they're actually kind of down the last couple of years. So it's a little misleading to think that he's not nailing. I mean, unfortunately he didn't nail the 2 5-star guys, but they're going to Kentucky.
Yeah.
Banchero's going to Duke, Hickman's going to Kentucky or Kansas, and Noel's going to Arizona. So you're never going to, I mean, Romar didn't even land those guys either. So, but yeah, I mean, when you don't have the excess talent coming in, you have to develop talent. And that's what we thought at UW needed all along, that Romar was really bad at, because scratch that. He was actually really good at developing talent, but he didn't admit to that because of his ego. Wanted to get the big like 5-star guys, and he tried to run this program like a one and done when he should have just been trying to get the Justin Holidays, Bobby Jones. When he had those guys, he had a lot of success on, but his sort of ego got in the way. And I think when he felt the pressure, he needed to start nailing those high end guys, and then. Yeah, the program's just in pretty big disarray right now.
Well, we fell in the same trap last year. I mean, to get, we got 2 more one and done guys, and I was just so over that. And it's like, you get excited when you land them, but I mean, what did it do? I mean, all 3 of our last like big name guys are one and done with, nothing to show for it. I mean, absolutely.
Absolute shit show. Is the old, I honestly think they may not win again. And they play you in Montana still. I think they might be underdogs.
I don't know what their full schedule is, but they don't look like a 4 or 5 win team. I mean, we had that year with Fultz. How many did we win that year when we had Fultz? Like 4 or 5?
Like total, like 10 maybe. But we had some.
That many? Okay. Oh, in conference. Yeah, conference was only like 2. That's right.
But we've only got 2 real like non-league games left, and it's Seattle U and Montana. If you don't win those, I mean, the Pac-12 isn't great, but the worst teams like Cal and Oregon State look, I mean, kind of frisky.
Better than us.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like the Riverside game, Riverside wouldn't win a game in the conference, and they fucking destroyed us. Like we had no. That wasn't. I mean, we've lost some bad non-conference games in the past, but we were that was over within 5 minutes of the game. There was no shot at that. And then, I mean, just a tip if you're not paying attention to college basketball, there's a player on Iowa that Luke Garza that's going to win, Naismith Player of the Year or whatever. But if you're not paying attention to what he's doing, just Wikipedia his stats to start the season. I texted Rob and Joey, and it's insane. The dude's averaging 40 points a game, and he's only playing a half. And he's shooting 90. He's averaging 40 and 10, and he's only played 25 minutes in each of his games. And it's like they're a top 5 team in the country, and he's shooting 90% from the field. It's absolutely insane. Now he's playing, like, we'll see what happens in the Big Ten, but he's one of those like Hansborough types, but pretty exciting numbers that he's throwing up. I wanted to just get my college basketball fix in because it's not going to happen in January.
Well, the Hawkeyes come to West Lafayette here, not too far, and I'm gonna sneak in there and watch that bad boy.
Nice.
All right, boys. Well, good talk. Good week 13.
Good luck. Good luck in the doubleheaders, guys.
I know, right? We're figuring out our viewing plans here.
Mask up. We got an SKFL owner that we think might have COVID, so take it serious and wear your mask.
HIPAA regulations, Jeffrey. We're over the airwaves, man. All right, guys. Take care.
All right. Have a good weekend, guys. I'll see you Sunday.
Later. Bye.